who knows, but next week we may have agreement on the next common agricultural policy. I raised the CAP process with the Taoiseach 2 weeks ago, and he accused me of being anti-European. I raised the CAP issue with the Minister for Agriculture last week, and he accused me of wanting all decisions to be made at a European level. I think it would be appropriate if Fianna Fáil learned that it is possible to defend Irish family farmers both at an Irish and an EU level, particularly when so much of the policies, so much of the standards, so much of the regulations that guide the work of our family farmers are being decided at a European level. Then it's absolutely appropriate that an Irish Agriculture Minister would fight on their behalf at EU level. Instead, that's not what we have had from this government. In fact, one of the first actions of the Taoiseach upon taking office last year was to sign off on a really bad European budget deal. That budget negotiation, to be generous to it, saw the proportion allocated to agriculture reduced from 37% to 30%. And therein lies the crux of the challenges that we now face. There was no word of flexibility at that point. There was no word of flexibility as to whether or not Ireland would agree, or whether or not Ireland would have any flexibility as to how the €13 billion of the so-called Common Defence Fund, a centralised military structure now to be created within the EU, would be allocated. There was no sense or argument in terms of flexibilities for the tens and hundreds of billions of euro that will be spent on various other streams of the European budget that will bring virtually no benefit to the Irish people at all. The first that we heard that the Irish government were the defenders of sovereignty and the defenders of the need for flexibility at a national level, of course, came about when at a European level there were proposals that would take money away from the Larry Goodmans and the sheiks and put them into the hands of family farmers. And all of a sudden, the Irish government became the defenders of the Irish people. But of course that's a ruse, because despite arguing for flexibilities and for sovereignty, the Minister for Agriculture acknowledged in this House last week that he has no intention of actually bringing the CAP strategic plan that will outline how he intends to use these flexibilities that he's been fighting so hard for, these flexibilities that he actually stalled the CAP talks for. He had no intention of bringing them before the houses of the Oireachtas. And I have to say, and this might be surprising to the Minister, but he should talk to his constituents in Donegal. They see very little difference in the outworkings of decisions made by bureaucrats in Brussels or in Ag House. They're bureaucrats at the end of the day. What people want are decisions that are made in the best interests of our rural communities and our family farmers. So therefore, I think today is an appropriate day for the government to come clean in terms of what their intentions are. The Minister for Agriculture appears to be the only person with any interest in Irish farming that doesn't have a position on the key elements of the next Common Agricultural Policy. He has no position in relation to how much should be redistributed in relation to convergence. That's despite the fact that his fellow spokesperson on agriculture, while in opposition for Fianna Fáil during the last CAP talks, actually organised public meetings the length and breadth of the country, slamming the then Fine Gael government for refusing to support redistributive measures. The Minister for Agriculture appears to be the only person that doesn't have a position in relation to whether or not there should be front-loading and what proportion of acreage should be allocated to front-loading, a position and a proposition that would disproportionately support and benefit farmers in his own constituency. And the Minister says that he supports an upper limit CAP payment, an upper limit in terms of the payments that any single entity can receive, and that he supports that level being at €60,000. But he hasn't put on the record clearly that he's going to fight against any discretions or any opt-outs that will allow people to still draw down the obscene sums that we've seen in recent weeks again. And he still hasn't articulated where, if anywhere, he has actually put that proposition to the European negotiations, and whether or not he is willing to stall the negotiations a second time if it means that those people on obscene payments would be continued to allowed to do so under the current arrangements. So next week we'll tell a big story. I hope that we will finally reach a point where an Irish government and an Irish Minister for Agriculture goes to Brussels and actually fights for Irish family farmers.